couple of challenges here. Archive Central, I was hoping they would get here earlier, they can't, and HBRC is still waiting for a couple of folk as well, so I suggest we go to item 16, which is the monthly work plan looking forward. I see Mr. 80's here, so a good chance to deal with that one on page 43. Take it as read. You wish to provide any comments to start us off?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we usually just take this as read, and there's normally a number of questions on it, so we're happy to do those.
Councillor Dick.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Earlier on, Mike, I just asked a question about West Shore renourishment, to be reminded as to where the material came from, and I was reminded it's coming out of the Nararoro. And I asked the question, which hasn't been answered, is the material compatible with West Shore beach material? Will it be a mix of fines and what will it be?
There's 15,000 cubic metres. 5,000 is sourced from Winston's aggregate Awatoto, so their reject, which is very evenly graded.
What, P metal?
P metal, and 10,000 is coming from the Nararoro. So yes, there will be I mean, it is run of river. There will be some fines in it, but it is quite small size. Chances are that it will stand a little bit more vertically than previous stuff that has come off Pacific Beach, as it erodes over time.
Will the material out of Nararoro be screened to take the big
No.
blocks out?
No.
So there'll be some...
very little big stuff. It's well down the river. The source is from between or downstream of Fern Hill and upstream of Chester Hope Bridge or the expressway. So roughly in just upstream of the expressway.
Right. And Napier City are happy enough about all this?
Yes, and we have had conversations with West Shore Residents and Development Association, showed them both sites, or their chairman both sites.
Okay.
So, yes.
So how are you going to mix the P metal with the other stuff?
We're not mixing it. We will be dumping some of the river metal in specific areas and the other material in specific areas, and we have asked them to provide feedback on the performance of both of them over time.
So you're relying on the weather and the waves?
Yes.
Mixing it up?
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Pipe.
Tūtira, you say there's an algal bloom there at the moment, is there? Do you know anything?
I see that under the open spaces area, but I would have to defer to the science team for that.
It just surprised me. At this time of the year, I thought it would have been maybe something a little bit later, and I'm just wondering if there's an update on that, because this report was written maybe a week or so ago.
I'm not a scientist, but my understanding is that the algal blooms do generally occur or commence sort of in springtime. You'd need one of the water quality scientists really to delve into that a bit more detail.
Councillor Belford.
I have 3 or 4 questions. A couple relate to science, though, so I'm not sure we can get answers. On page 44, about 3 bullets up from the bottom, there's a reference to satellite mapping of land use in the Haratunga Plains. Is there any sense of when any kind of report of that will be available? Okay. And then looking in there and then looking across at the reference to tank that's on the next page, 45, under strategic development, I didn't see any reference to the hydrology work. I mean, there was this sort of workshop that was held a while back. My understanding is the science staff was going off to determine what additional field work might need to be done to respond to those issues, drilling, et cetera. When might we get any kind of sense of their recommendations on that?
Look, again, I'm not sure. It seems to me, just glancing at the science update. There was only land science that actually completed there, but there doesn't seem to be anything from groundwater or surface water at all. So we'll have to again get that information back to you next month.
Okay. And the last one, economic development at the bottom of page 45. I see that Business Hawke's Bay is going to come in on the 18th of November. Can we assume that that will include a report on the item just above that, this joint research project on market-led primary sector opportunities? It's first I've heard of anything like that.
Yep, they'll be discussing among other things their upcoming work program. That's a key component of it.
Okay, and then lastly, the word energy doesn't appear anywhere in here. Is the Energy Futures project disappeared off the radar entirely?
Not entirely, but there has been some resourcing issues, as was noted in the annual plan progress report. I mean, we had a number of policy positions waiting to be filled, and to be fair to those people, we couldn't offer them positions until we knew the outcome of the amalgamation vote.
This was Tom Skirman's.
Yeah, it was. Tom's had to probably take a bit of a back seat in that regard, so we're looking at getting others to, or at least another person to pick it up. Tom is conscious of the fact that he hasn't given it the time that it's needed, and so we're hoping to be able to redress that with our new staff appointments.
Any other questions? Actually had one over here. The wireless trap trials, Mr. Adey, can you give us a bit of an update on that? Is it as good as it looked? First round, I mean, it looked pretty impressive. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it as impressive?
I haven't had a recent update, but my understanding is that yes, it is as good as we are hoping, and clearly we will be rolling those out into the whole of the Cape to City footprint area over the next 12 months. So, but yeah, happy to provide an update on that project, perhaps.
Is resourcing them an issue? Are they very expensive?
They can be expensive, but the producers of them can get a good deal provided they are ordering large numbers. And so they're the figures that I heard were $50 a unit if they can produce and sell large, 10,000 plus. So, and that is probably too big for our project, but I think there's quite a lot of interest from elsewhere around New Zealand. So
just to finish that, is that coming? Is there someone coordinating that? Is Campbell?
Yes, Campbell's right onto that. Yeah,
trying to get some savings by getting a group together.
Yeah.
No further questions? Thank you, Councillor Barker. Was someone happy to second that? Thank you, Councillor Bevan. If anyone wishes to speak, put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Chairman's monthly report. Had an interesting month with probably meeting different folk. Just a comment on the Hawke's Bay show, and Nathan Guy was there. I had an hour or so with him, and just want to add a comment around our the joint regional council Cape to City stand. I don't know if you all got in there, but there was exaggerated reports that the whitebait was stolen out of the display there, and there was a bloke with a fox terrier and a cap seen leaving the scene in an Alfa Romeo, but unsubstantiated to date. Yeah, red Alfa Romeo. Yeah, but no, that display was very well put together, and I congratulate them for what they did. Minister Guy was in town. It was his second of 3 appointments that day, so he was in a bit of a rush, but he did his usual look around the show, and it was good to catch up with him. Pretty much the rest as read. I thank Councillors Scott and Pipe for representing us at a couple of things I couldn't attend. Suzhou delegations, perhaps Mr. Adey could comment on that. There was another one coming too, is there? A bit of a flurry at the moment, or?
Yes, after when we were preparing the annual plan, we had nothing for 12 months or so. We now have had 2, and we've got 2 more before the end of this calendar year, and not sure what's happening next year. But one of those, or the final one, will be from the politicians, including the Ministry of whatever their Foreign Affairs is. And so they will be keen to discuss future delegations with us. So, and haven't got dates for that specifically, but it is sometime late next month or early December.
Would be good to invite
Yep.
councillors to that.
Yes,
Would be
certainly,
good,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
Watch for Mr. Mohi, yeah, no, they'll have one of them.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just in regard to that, okay, there's been nothing much happening for some period of time, but earlier on, effectively Ron Massey was sort of handling stuff on our behalf as Napier City's de facto sister city in any case. Are we in a position, if this sort of cranks up, to manage things? Or would we do so in relation, in conjunction with Napier? What's the likelihood?
Certainly Ron Massey is no longer available or on the scene, and our compliance manager, Wayne Wright, has ably stepped up to help me with hosting these delegations. So he has hosted one already very successfully, and has another one this Friday to host. So yeah, we're managing okay, and I mean it's there. They tend to arrive either in the evening, whether or not they need us to meet from the airport varies, and we catch up with them at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they are gone by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a little bit disappointing, very short, but that's a conversation that we need to have with the delegation organisers from Suzhou, and that will be later. That will be the last visit this year.
Yeah, I mean, potentially there's advantages for business, Hawke's Bay business. I mean, it's a very big sister city, isn't it? It's a monster. How many million people?
9 million.
9 million. So, you know, and particularly if political people are coming out, then I believe you need to be involving the likes of Business Hawke's Bay, Chamber of Commerce. Yes.
The last delegation to come was focused on education, and Taradale High School and EIT were very good at putting out their expectations with regard to overseas or international students. And yeah, there's always opportunities through that process.
Yeah, I wonder whether you almost, if the intensity is going to step up, whether there's necessity for maybe a councillor to have a sort of portfolio role, or whether the chairman takes it on.
If they keep coming in this volume, which just seems to be a flurry of activity at the moment. Absolutely. Anything else to comment here? Pretty much the Hawke's Bay, the local government leaders, we've had 2 meetings. The mayors are settling down after the amalgamation result. It's been interesting. There's been a few chief executives who've chosen to take leave following that period, etc. So the 2 meetings we've had have been reasonably low key so far, but there is a determination to further shared service opportunities and not limit to procurement and those sorts of matters, but actually to look at bigger opportunities around perhaps shared building services, etc. Early days yet. The CEs may have had 1 meeting, I think, so far, and that was it. So there's more work to do there, Councillor Dick.
Yeah, well, Mr Chairman, again, given that it's only been, 5 weeks or so since the reorganisation decision, but I would hope that as well as shared services, which, I mean, there's a mechanism for dealing with that in any case, that the issue of regional advocacy and regional strategic planning is on the agenda for your consideration in due course.
I agree. And it actually follows on from Councillor Belford's comments around regional activity being funded regionally with agreement from everyone. So there is some work to do there, some opportunity, definitely. The Wairoa Tai Whenua, that was an interesting day. Basically, Business Hawke's Bay, they had everyone up there. They had a good turnout at their end, and it was a very productive day. And it gives me great heart to think that when the Māori committee go up there next year, there'll be a good reception and a good turnout. They're a pretty proactive bunch up there, and Ril Mehana is, as you say, has experience with the Māori committee here, so he is aware of what needs to be done to facilitate such a meeting. Meeting with Tamati Olsen, he's the Te Wairoa claimant representative, and he also chairs the claimant groups of Prau of Takitimu. I had quite a good session with him recently. They're moving towards settlement date in February, March, I think, at this stage, so we're watching that with great interest. The rest is pretty much there. I'm actually sitting on a hearing panel at the moment with Councillor Hewitt and Councillor Scott, which has been very interesting. Other than that, Sir Witta Gardner's here early next month, Local Government Commission. There's been quite a few changes in the Commission, and it'll be interesting to see what their view of the world is following the result in Hawke's Bay. So.
What is the agenda of the joint councillor meeting? Right above that point.
To discuss REDS.
Who?
The REDS, Regional Economic Development Strategy.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. You should have had an invite for that.
I got an invite, but I don't think it actually said what the purpose of the meeting was.
Right, okay, yeah.
We all got invites, but.
That may be a bit vague. I'll check up on it. Cool. End of November. It's a Monday, I think. It's a Monday, pardon me?
End of November gives you a few options.
It does. 30th, there you go.
You've been quite busy on behalf of the council while also campaigning for another office. When do you hear the fruits of that effort?
AGM, I think. It comes through next week. And haven't been doing much campaigning, I might add. One ad.
Tom is offering to be your campaign manager.
And I may take him up on it.
Yeah. Chair, when you said earlier in the meeting you were going to reflect on whether you'd send a report out in advance, I think it would also be worth your while reflecting on the nature of your report. I'm not wishing to be seen as critical, but I would have read this, as I always have done, as the chairman's diary.
Pretty
It's
much.
it's not a report. A report normally carries information, commentary, analysis, conclusions. This is really a list of events you've attended. It's more of a diary. So when you're reflecting on whether you put the report out sooner or later, I think it would be worth your while reflecting on making it into a report. Don't have to comment on everything, I wouldn't have thought, but I've said there were 5 things I wish to pursue this month, and these were, and this is what it was, and other meetings I attended, bang, that would be much more useful. But from this I get virtually no information other than a list of events.
It's always been a diary reflection. That's been the history of it, but I take on board what you say.
But
It makes some sense.
But it's a diary, not a report.
Chairman's monthly diary.
Just
Oh,
to
Councillor
expand
Hewitt.
on that as well, because I've had my hand up for a while, I find this quite rear view looking, and in terms of how it can enable more councillor input, I would find, instead of just 3 bullet points for the priorities ahead, maybe it would be helpful to expand on what the priorities are, so that then you can be seeking councillor involvement in advance rather than reporting back. that would be of more use to me. Because just for instance, coming up, the Central Hawke's Bay show is coming up next month, and that's in none of the staff reports or this, but I would have thought that was one of the highlights to be communicating with our CHB constituents. So that's just an example. Perhaps we might be filling in a few more gaps as well if we're looking a bit more forward-looking.
No, useful, thank you. Any other questions, comments on this? Someone happy to move then we accept the chairman's report?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Move it.
And I'd also note that until about 4.5 years ago, there was no such thing as a chairman's report in any form. So sure, it can be improved, but it's certainly an improvement on what didn't happen earlier on.
Okay, well, it makes you the seconder, I think. Okay, no further comment. I'll put the motion, and all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Minor